everybody, and welcome to our pre-lecture for Chapter 3 of the Knowledge, a Very Short Introduction book. This is the first chapter that you're going to be reading this week, and it's on the topic of rationalism versus empiricism, which are two different ways of understanding where our knowledge of the world, assuming we have such, originates. As you read this chapter, you're going to see that there's a lot of historical detail in here, and all of this is very good to note. We're going to see a familiar face in René Descartes, and we're going to see a new philosopher, for us anyway, in John Locke, who opposes him. Roughly speaking, Descartes is a rationalist, Locke an empiricist. As usual, it's very important that you do pay attention to these historical facts, but it's more important that you not let being involved with these historical facts prevent you from engaging with the actual concepts at play. So when you read, do pay attention to the history, but focus most on how these accounts are being developed and how the ideas involved are related. Something that's worth thinking about that Nagel doesn't discuss in this chapter, but is very important to the way that rationalism and empiricism work, is to remember that there are going to be two different kinds, and we're going to talk about these in more detail in our post-lecture. On the one hand, we have rationalism and empiricism relating to knowledge, right? Where do the things we know come from? And then we have rationalism and empiricism relating to concepts. Where do the concepts that we employ when thinking about the world come from? Now, this is a fuzzy distinction, but it is going to be an important one. Right? So there is knowledge of concepts, but there's also going to be employing concepts themselves. Right? So you might not consider what red is to be knowledge, right? What is red? What is redness? Though some people would, right? At least not in this typical sense of saying something like, that apple is red. Likewise, 2 + 2 = 4, that's a feature of knowledge, that's a statement, a proposition, a knowledgeable proposition. But what is 2? That's a basic concept. Now, most people are going to agree that for more sophisticated concepts, you're going to need some sort of interaction with the outside world, usually. But for things like the concept of identity, what does it mean for something to be identical to something else? There are going to be people who suggest that rationalism is the way to go. So it's important to make this distinction between knowledge and concept and just keep it in mind as you move forward. And of course, think about where you yourself come down on these issues. Do you think that knowledge is primarily something about internal reflection, in the sense the rationalist does? Or do you think that it's primarily about engaging the world, perceiving things, and then using these things that you've perceived in new ways to construct new understandings, as the empiricist does? Also note that while this discussion is going to be very heavily based in two major historical figures, that this debate continues to today. And when we get to the post-lecture period, you're going to find out more about how that works and how the modern forms of these theories work. So hopefully you have a good time reading this chapter, and I'll see you at the post-lecture.